Hello everyone, it's Mike Levin.
Hi, it's me, Abby.
And Addie on Saturday, June 11th.
And I'm playing a game if you hear any noises.
Yeah, we're heading over the Tappan Zee Bridge, I guess on the final days of its existence. I don't know how much longer it's going to actually take, but I can see the bridge next to us going up and being further along with every time I pass over it. So it's not at an inconsiderable pace. And I guess they're going out from both sides, and we'll be meeting in the middle or something, and all those. I got to get the terminology down for these concrete things that stick up out of the water that become these sort of crossbars of the steel platforms that they lay from between bar and bar. It's fascinating seeing the bridge go up. I'll snap some pictures of them from time to time, just to document the process, to look back and go, hey, we remembered when that bridge was being built. I am committing to the area of New York City, if not living in Manhattan in particular. Being a city and New York City person has many advantages in my career. It's where the job market is, and my current job is going extremely well. My boss is tapping my skills and tech muscles that I've been dying to be flexing for many years. Really, I would say since Hittail. That was my last thing that went out to the public in a big way, such that it's lasted for over a decade now. Woohoo! And there was... Sure. Yeah, I do know you're going to homeschool school. Tell me some of the things you're doing there, Addie. Superhero camp.
Lego robotics.
Lego robotics, okay. What else?
We just learned math and fencing.
Math and fencing. Very, very cool, Addie. Trampoline class. I heard you guys mention that. So yeah, I think that's true too. That is extremely exciting. Wish I had school like that when I was a kid. No, I think they had homeschool. We just, a couple of things. We weren't living in New York City where there's so many resources around you for homeschooling. And maybe it wasn't quite as popular, or people had, excuse me, a different image of it than exists today. Certainly in the New York City area. Yeah, so when you homeschool, you've got the resources of one of the greatest cities in the world at your disposal. A density of people such that you can always gather enough with aligned niche interests. It doesn't always have to be the mainstream topics. And some of these niche interests are delightfully becoming mainstream, like Lego robots. Oh my God. So, enough said. I'm definitely adjusting my professional career to be, shall we say, in tune with my desires for Addie's education. So, robots, definitely. Hardware aspect of robots, please, by all means, Legos, whatever. Software aspect of robots. I don't think that there's really getting away from blocky and scratch. So I'll be doing the visual drag and drop, looping Vice-like images with little instructions set by drop-down menus on the inside of those boxes. Visual drag and drop programming. User interface exists beyond the text type in interface, and I suppose you can be encouraged to use them. Just the lesson is that it's not all that exists, and it's not even always the best way to use a computer, Because if you have to use a mouse and drag and drop and set things, what happens when you want to start describing things in verbal terms and you say, okay, take that and repeat it 1,000 times, or bring it up whenever this other thing happens, and you want to start to work in more of these almost English language instruction type ways so that you can write it out and check out what you wrote. Because words are a visual unit as well. The difference between blocky and scratch visual programming and a Python text file is not really as large as you might think, especially when you consider the way Python enforces the white space indenting to contain blocks. Bam! Visual environment, because when you look at it, the very positions of things imply what's going to be happening. That vice-like loop that visual programming really enforces by turning a loop bracket into a literal bracket around blocks on the inside is visually there by necessity in Python. Now, it can optionally be there in other languages, but it'll work whether you indent or not, however much you indent it, or if you just do one long giant line with semicolons between every, block. Doesn't matter. The visual aspect of it is an optional thing, so the ability to learn to program in the written out way, tapping your visual capacity, is diminished in programs other than Python, because Python's the only popular mainstream one that enforces white space. It's amazing the subtle things that are in play that are contributing to each other to drive up Python's popularity. And I will say that I'm undergoing quite a transition where I was predisposed to starting with Python in the extremely old school hardcore way, Vim and Vim only, no IDEs. And whenever I wanted to test my Python code, I would drop out from Vim into a shell and type Python space file name .py and see it run, then hit exit, which drops me back into Vim, which is kind of the manual way of using Vim as an IDE, where you would have a keyboard shortcut which would just run your code right there. Oh, I just did some editing, bam, let's see how it runs. And if something went wrong, it could stop at that place it went wrong as a breakpoint and let you right-click on variable names and investigate the value of the variable. At that time, the program stops running. That's what IDEs do, particularly things like PyCharm that are built for Python. You can think of them sort of as the Microsoft Visual Studio of Python, but in the free and open source world, at least partially. There's a commercial version of PyCharm as well there should be. Any of these tools that are wonderful gifts to the free and open source community.
And I am trying to focus on my game.
Okay, I'll
And you're getting boring.
Yeah, I'm getting boring.
Boring.
So anyway, I chose Vim over IDEs, and I have recently succumbed to the power. I gave in to the siren's call. I yielded to temptation of what was previously known IPython Notebook, but is now Jupyter Notebook. That is kind of like an IDE, but not really. It's more like the interactive Python command line console.
You're getting boring.
Well, maybe I'm not boring to these people. Did you ever think about that? Maybe they want to hear what I have to say about Jupyter Notebook. No? So, the lesson is very simply, when people lose their cool, not even you, just people in general, as they tend to do, they slip into a very primitive animal form of behavior. Because what they're doing is they're trying to get a rise out of you by behaving in a very animalistic way. And when you meet animalistic with animalistic, what you have is a fight. That's how fights happen. Simple as that. Yeah. One person takes a stupid position that they shouldn't be taking because they're not listening to their intellect. They're not listening to the pulses of energy that are flitting about on the surface of their head in their prefrontal cortex, the area that we call our gray matter. The wrinkly gray stuff that when you imagine the brain, it's the part you imagine as the brain. It's the wrinkly stuff on the outside. That's where your human thoughts exist. When you can hear yourself think, that's what it is. Sure. When you quietly talk to yourself, that's the energy patterns that are at the highest level. That's why we call it high level. They're at the highest level of your brain's operation. Now, when you get angry or annoyed, it's deeper down levels in your brain. It's the stuff underneath your gray matter that is shouting, tell daddy something that you know is going to make him angry. And it overrides your top level, your higher order thinking. Now, it's okay, Addie. You didn't do anything wrong at all. I'm just explaining to you what did happen. Yeah. I do, I forgot. We're talking about other things now. So when you do things because you're deep down inside an animal tells you to do it, stuff, part of your brain we used to call the limbic system, but we know it's a lot more than that. It's, you know, your hypothalamus and a lot of other systems that are at play in there. There's another one that people refer to a lot. Endocrine, I forget their names, but they all work together and they all evolved at different times in the history of the animals that became eventually human beings. And they all serve various functions, and people talk about the fight or flight response. If a bear is coming at you, deciding whether to play dead or to run away or to fight it. They call it a binary response, but it's not really binary. Fight or flight, because it's shutting down. It's just freezing up. When you're faced with too big of decisions, like the decisions are too big for you to be able to make on your own, sometimes your brain just doesn't know what to do and it freezes up. Sometimes you even faint, not you, but people. And fainting is like playing dead, and a bear will think you're dead and just move on. If you put up resistance, it knows it might have a tasty meal. So a lot of these behaviors come in a deep place inside of us from before we ever even had so much crinkly matter on our head that we could use to think with. And that's how that works. So the more you can work on intuition and gut, and the more that the information you're taking in is based on visual information, what you can see and what you can smell, but we don't program with smelling yet. Same with taste and touch. When something is hot, you pull your hand away. You don't even think with your rational brain. Too much of programming has you thinking with your rational brain, the one that uses words and languages. And you don't do your best because you're not in touch with your deep animal instincts that actually happens to be pretty smart and know a lot. So it's okay to start out with visual programming like scratch and blocky. But you have to be able to override it, to take control with your higher level thinking, your higher level languages, the type-in user interface, the talking, the intellectual stuff.
What about the walking?
Walking is controlled by your inner animal, and it's not even in your brain. It's in a part of your nervous system called your spinal cord. I believe the upper portion of your spinal cord controls your walking. And when people lose their walking ability, they can take robot legs and play back rhythms from earthworms, because their spinal cords are similar enough. maybe it's not earthworms, but recorded synaptic patterns from any animal with a spinal cord that moves. And that movement signal will make you walk. There's more involved that is going to help you keep your balance, but that's stuff in your ear and other systems. But yeah, you get the idea. Walking is about the opposite as it gets to conscious thought. It's some of your deepest animalistic instincts. Good question, Addie. Any other questions?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, cool. Well, that was a good video.
Well, I'm gonna be in it too.
Oh, believe me, Addie, you were in this